The water around you is black, not the black of a moonless night, the black of an abyss that has never seen light, not in 4 billion years. You cannot feel it yet, but something here is watching you, listening. It is not a creature with eyes or ears. It is a molecular pattern, a chemical echo that has been hunting your lineage since before there was a lineage to hunt. You were taught that life began in a warm, gentle pond, a cozy little soup where amino acids bumped into each other like polite strangers at a gathering. That story is a lie. The evidence does not support it. The first life did not emerge from a pond. It emerged from a war zone. The evidence sits at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, spewing water at 400 degrees Celsius, a place so violently hostile that your skin would peel away before your nerves could register the pain. There is a vent field off the coast of what is now the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. It was discovered in 1977, 900 fathoms deep. The heat looks like a shimmer in the abyssal black. You cannot see the temperature, you feel it. The water is scalding acid, rich in hydrogen sulfide and heavy metals. And here is the thing nobody prepared you for. That environment did not kill the first life. It created it. In 1953, a graduate student named Stanley Miller ran an experiment in a laboratory at the University of Chicago. He filled a glass flask with methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor. The gases scientists assumed were in the early atmosphere. He sent a spark through the mixture to simulate lightning. Within days, the flask turned reddish. Miller found amino acids drifting in the liquid. The press called it the origin of life in a test tube. But Miller was wrong about the atmosphere. The early atmosphere was not methane-rich. It was carbon dioxide and nitrogen, a mixture that produces almost nothing. Miller's success was a lucky accident of bad geology. The real chemistry happened somewhere else. You have just been handed the real location of life's origin, and it is not a pond. It is a chemical battlefield at the bottom of the sea. If you want to keep uncovering the forbidden backstory of your own existence, subscribe. Because the revelations coming next will rearrange your understanding of what it means to be alive. Leave the word cyanide in the comments if you are ready to see the full chemistry of how life forged itself from poison. Here is the part that changes everything. The hydrogen cyanide level in the early ocean was not a trace impurity. It was a deadly concentration. Cyanide is the chemical signature of a massacre. It kills by bonding to the iron in your cells, suffocating them from the inside. And yet that same molecule in that same abyss became the building block of your existence. The first sugars, the first nucleic acids, they formed from cyanide, not from a gentle soup. The evidence comes from the laboratory of John Sutherland in 2009. He showed that hydrogen cyanide and hydrogen sulfide under ultraviolet light produce the raw ingredients for RNA, not in a pond, in a toxic, scalding, sulfurous vent field. If you have ever felt that the textbook version of your origin story was sanitized, that there was something too clean about the warm pond narrative, you are right. The evidence has been sitting in core samples and deep-sea recordings for decades, and the real story is stranger and darker than anything you were told. Now consider the molecule that started it all. RNA is a self-replicating molecule that can fold into shapes that perform chemical reactions. It can both store information and build itself. But RNA is also profoundly unstable. It falls apart in hours at the temperatures of a warm pond. It degrades in sunlight. It hydrolyzes in water. The first replicator cannot have been a delicate molecule that disintegrates at the slightest change. And yet, life began with something that was the opposite of fragile. What nobody talks about is the subterranean chamber. There is a second kind of hydrothermal vent discovered in the years 2000 and beyond. Not the black smokers of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, but alkaline vents. One sits 3,000 meters deep, active since before the Earth had an ozone layer. The water being jetted out is 40 to 90 degrees Celsius, rich in hydrogen, and it meets the ocean in a porous matrix of mineral chimneys. These chambers are warm, but not scalding. They are sheltered from ultraviolet radiation, and they are lined with thousands of microscopic pores, each one a natural compartment that concentrates organic molecules by orders of magnitude. The first self-replicating molecule did not float free in an open pond. It was confined inside a mineral cell, inside a vent, inside the abyss, at the bottom of an ocean that has never known what it means to be hospitable. And that confinement was not accidental. It was necessary, because a replicator floating free in a pool would have diluted to nothing before it could copy itself once. The vent chamber became the first womb, and it was a prison. But here is where the story turns from strange to brutal. A single molecule, even a replicating one, is not alive. To become a cell, it needed a membrane, a boundary, a wall that could keep the good chemistry inside and keep the destructive chemistry outside. And the membrane that worked was not some gentle phospholipid bilayer that forms spontaneously in gentle water. It was a molecule called a fatty acid, and it is a toxin to unprotected cells. The membrane that life uses to separate itself from the world was originally a weapon. It was a poison that the first molecules learned to weaponize. By the year 2017, experiments at the Japanese research vessel Chikyu confirmed that hydrothermal vents produce fatty acids in abundance, not as a byproduct, but as a natural precipitate of the chemical gradient between hot vent fluid and cold ocean water. The membrane formed automatically. It sealed the RNA inside, and that act of sealing created a tension that has not relaxed in 4 billion years. Consider what you are made of. Every cell in your body is a bag of toxic chemistry held together by a membrane that would not exist without the relentless, violent pressure of the deep ocean. Your mitochondria, the energy factories inside each of your cells, were once free-living bacteria that were captured, enslaved, and turned into cellular engines. You are not a pure lineage. You are a colony of invaders. The first predator was not a creature with teeth. It was a molecule that learned to steal energy from another molecule. And you are its descendant. If you have ever felt like a stranger in your own body, you are not imagining it. Your cells are not all your kin. Inside every one of them, a former parasite spins the energy currency that keeps you alive. The first cell was not a peaceful commune. It was a coup, a traitor colony that subjugated one species and sealed the other inside a lipid bag. And that betrayal is the reason you can read this sentence. Now we arrive at the moment of ignition. The RNA strand inside the mineral pore is copying itself. Each copy is imperfect. Mutation was present from the very beginning. One of those mutated copies folds into a shape that accelerates the assembly of fatty acids. It is building its own prison, and that prison, that poison membrane, becomes a new compartment, a protocell. It is not alive yet. It cannot sense. It cannot move. But it can do something no molecule has ever done before. It can retain its own chemical advantage. The ones with the better membranes survived. The ones with faster replication survived. The ones whose mutations produced a slightly more stable chemistry survived. Selection began before there was anything to select. This is where the standard story stops. But the revelation that the textbooks still refuse to print is this: that first protocell did not just survive. It consumed. The membrane was not a passive wall. It was an aggressive chemical gradient, a proton pump that the cell used to draw energy from the environment by sacrificing its own internal stability. The first living cell was a machine that lived on a knife edge of self-destruction. It was a metastable suicide pact that somehow held together long enough to pass its chemistry forward. You have inside your stomach right now a lining that replaces itself every 5 days. The acid in your stomach is powerful enough to dissolve your own cells. And that lining is the legacy of a membrane that was originally a poison. Life does not exist despite hostility. Life exists because hostility created the conditions for selection that nothing gentle could replicate. The main loop closes here. The central mystery, why life began in violence, not in peace, is resolved by the evidence of the alkaline vent chambers, the cyanide chemistry, the predatory membrane, and the captive mitochondria. The first cell was not a fragile survivor in a gentle pond. It was a chemical weapon that learned to seal itself inside a compartment of its own making, and then it turned that compartment into a furnace that has never stopped burning. But one loop remains open, and it is the loop that should unsettle you more than anything already revealed. That unsettled feeling is correct, because the evidence suggests that your existence is the outcome of a prebiotic genocide. Subscribe to stay with this investigation, because we are about to descend into the genomic evidence of that war, and you will want to see what your own DNA still remembers. In the comments, tell me, do you think the other life forms were simply outcompeted, or were they actively destroyed by the first successful cell? Let me know. We know that every living cell on Earth shares a common ancestor, a single protocell that gave rise to everything from algae to blue whales to you. The evidence for that is in the universal genetic code, the shared ribosome structure, the presence of the same 20 amino acids in every organism. But we do not know why life began only once. The conditions that produced that first protocell, the hydrogen cyanide, the alkaline vents, the proton gradients, the fatty acid membranes, those conditions existed in thousands of locations across the early Earth. And as far as the fossil record and the genomic evidence can tell, only one lineage survived. The rest of the primordial experiments either died out or were consumed by the successful lineage. That means your existence is not just improbable. It is the result of a mass extinction of all other potential life forms that happened before there were even living things to compete. The first predator killed not just its prey, it killed every alternative version of itself. You are the sole survivor of a prebiotic war that has no name, because no one was there to record it. And the evidence of that war is already in your own genome. Every protein you make, every chemical reaction in your cells, is shaped by the fact that a single molecular betrayal succeeded, while 1,000 others failed. The final sensory anchor. Stand at the edge of the continental shelf and feel the deep cold water rising from below. The temperature drops by 10 degrees in a single step. The water is dense with minerals, phosphorus, iron, zinc, that your cells will use tomorrow to copy your DNA. The same minerals that the first replicator used to make its imperfect copies 4 billion years ago. That cold water is the archive. It is the library of every failed attempt. And it is full. The evidence is not hidden. It is waiting for you to understand what you are.